So in this segment, we're going to be talking about Trump and the him signing an executive order to for some COVID relief and him effectively gutting Social Security and Medicare. I think that's where payroll taxes go from my limited knowledge of America. So I'm pretty sure that's what happens anyways from what I've read and other videos I've seen. And so what's happened is that Congress has broken down over the amounts to give people. The Republicans don't want to give people more on unemployment than they would have gotten at work, and the Democrats are useless. The vast majority of them, apart from some of the gang. But yeah, let's dig into this one. So, US President Trump has taken executive action to provide economic aid to millions of Americans hit in the pandemic, saying he was forced to do something after after talks at Congress broke down. And there's also the theory that the Republicans forced the talks to break down in order for Trump to come in looking like a savior. I don't think that's true, especially because they're going to be running away from Trump purely because he's tanking in the polls. So the directives include measures to support the unemployed, suspend payroll tax. So that's the thing that will cut Medicare and Social Security, because that's where that money goes to, and extend student loans. Which two of these three things I absolutely agree with. But there are real problems with what he's done and how he's done about it specifically. So some of them are likely to face legal challenges given that Congress controls federal spending, so Congress controls the purse. So I think probably all three of these, well, maybe not student loans, but these two will definitely be taken through the courts. Democratic rival Joe Biden said a series of half-baked measures, which he's partially right on, but what's your solution? You ain't got one. It is not known whether Democrats It is not known whether the move will mean the Democrats will mean the end of talks between senior government officials and top Democrats for a stimulus package. Negotiations broke down on Friday after 2 weeks. Well, I think they're going to have to go back to negotiations and challenge Trump on this one, because if they let Trump get away with it, then they've just effectively expanded the powers of the president. And if they do go through the courts and don't actually come up with the stimulus package, then what you've given is Trump an effective win by saying that, him doing nothing effectively, because he can be like, well, I tried to help you, the Democrats didn't let me. So, Democrats, please be intelligent with the thing that you're actually going to do. Mr. Trump said the measures would provide up to $400 per week in supplementary unemployment benefits to tens of millions of jobless Americans. This is less than $600, less than the $600 people have been receiving since the 31st of July, when the benefit has expired. So it doesn't look like it's enough money, especially live in a city, and you've got these high rents like New York and places in California and stuff like that. The president also said states would cover 25% of new payments in the previous benefit. There should be a full stop there, really. The president also said that the states would cover 25% of new payments. The previous benefit was fully funded by the federal government. He's seeking to divert money from a previously approved disaster aid to states. So this is where Congress will effectively pin him, because I remember he tried to use money from the Pentagon to fund his wall, which I don't think went down very well. And so he's going to ping for this, especially because these states won't be able to afford it, because a lot of them are struggling financially anyways. So to ask them to partially pay for the unemployment is not going to be a good idea, especially when he works like the federal government can pump more money into the economy. Sure, you have problems with inflation, but right now I wouldn't make that your number one concern, but I'm not an economist. Mr. Trump said it would be up to the states, which already face huge financial shortfalls due to the pandemic, to determine how much to be used of the fund to pay for the benefit. This means that the extra payment may end up only amounting to being $300 a week, which will be helpful, but it just won't be enough. This is the money they need. This is the money they want. This gives them an incentive to go back to work. And the thing is, what these people don't understand is a lot of these people, their jobs are gone. Like, they can't go back to work because these jobs don't exist anymore because the pandemic's taken them. Whether that be like things like restaurant, maybe the restaurant they worked at's closed down because they didn't get the federal funding they needed, or wherever the shop's closed down, or wherever these people work. So this idea that people are lazy and if we give them too much money they're going to go back to work is like, big man, the jobs are gone. Some of these jobs are gone. They'll never come back. So I don't understand what this mentality is. The measures also include a suspension of the collection of payroll taxes, which pay for Social Security and federal programs. Though to the end of this year, there's a suspension of federal student loan payments and efforts to minimise evictions, but not a moratorium. So I think a moratorium is Let's Google that. I think that means like a ceasefire sort of thing, where people won't be evicted. A temporary prohibition of activity. So it's not permanent, it's just a temporary one. I think that's what they need, an eviction moratorium, because there are, I think a lot of people miss their rent payments in July, and they'll miss them again in August, and you're going to see one of the biggest homeless crises ever in a developed country. And that's going to be a big problem for, Trump and Joe Biden. If he wins in November, it's going to be a huge problem, and it's going to cause problems up the chain, where if people can't afford to pay their rent, then if it's a person who's bought the house with a mortgage, they can't pay the mortgage, so the house will get repossessed. We're talking 2008 on steroids, potentially. The Democratic-controlled House of Representatives has approved a 3.5 trillion package, which was rejected by the Republican-held Senate. Speaker of the House, Nancy Pelosi, the most powerful elected Democrat, said that they lowered the figure in talks to 2 trillion. So you've lowered it by a whole 1.5 trillion. Because of your petty weakness. But Republicans have proposed a $1 trillion plan. Miss Pelosi and Senate Minority Leader Wall Street Chuck Schumer dismissed the president's actions as a mirage, saying that they were unworkable, weak, and narrow policy announcements in the face of economic and health crises. Mr. Biden, Trump's rival in November, accused him of putting Social Security at grave risk by delaying the collection of payroll taxes, and called the measure another cynical ploy designed to deflect responsibility. But Mitch McConnell said he supported the president exploring options to get unemployment benefits and other relief to people who need them most. If you wanted to help people, Mitch McConnell, then you wouldn't be stopping these bills coming through, and you're stopping talk. So shut up, Turtle Boy. Go back in your shell. The U.S. unemployment rate continued to fall in July, but it was much lower. It was a much lower decrease than in May and June, denting hopes of economic revival. The V-shaped revival is not going to happen. The country's death toll from coronavirus pandemic has surpassed 160,000. The US has far more COVID deaths by volume than any other country, nearly 5 million, and its rate of infection has risen steadily throughout the summer because people aren't taking this seriously. Congress has already allocated some $3 trillion for pandemic relief so far. Some Republicans in Congress do not wish to spend any more, and nearly half of the Republican senators say they would oppose any new relief bill at all. So if I was a person living in any of these states, I'd be contacting my senator and saying, how come you had money to bail out big business, but you didn't have money to help us? We're the ones who voted you in, we're the ones who got you to where you are, and you refuse to help us. That's what I'd be saying to these senators and House officials, or whoever your elected representatives are, because at the end of the day, they bailed out big business, and they've given money to people who didn't actually need the money. People like the groups like the Ayn Rand Institute, which doesn't believe in government help, but they won't help you. And at the end of the day, if I did see an interesting thing where they say that the thing that actually destroys capitalism isn't communism, it's when people can't afford to buy things. What happens when people are homeless and can't afford to buy food? Not only are they going to suffer, could they potentially die, but say that person goes to the hospital, can't pay the bills, you got hospital bills racking up, the whole system collapses on itself, people can't afford to buy, food, actual necessities, they can't afford to buy luxuries, and then all of that stuff, the price comes crashing down on it, and people lose jobs in manufacturing because people can't afford to buy them. It's just ridiculous. And so the whole system will collapse because people can't afford the basics in life. Capitalism is pushed, it works through debt and consumerism, but what happens when people default on the debt? What happens then when people can't afford to live? And that's what's happening in America, and it's happening to an extent in the UK as well. And so this whole thing is a joke. Trump's doing this not because he cares for people. He's doing this because he's desperate for re-election, and what he's seeing is an opportunity, or a manufactured opportunity, where he can try and take a victory lap and say, I've helped people, the courts are going to strike this down most likely, and then what's going to happen is he's going to I tried to help you, but the Democrats wouldn't let me do it. So vote for me in November, because the Democrats don't care, when we know you don't care, big man. So I'm going to leave it there. I've rambled on long enough. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.